Hey everyone, today is January 21st, so we'll be looking at January 20th MTG stocks. We have a few price increases on Art Theros Beyond, which is good to see. Not good to see, but more just, at least it's more interesting to see, because most of these price increases are fake, as we've discussed before, because since Theros isn't out yet, these pre-order prices basically are all over the place, so I don't trust any of them, and you probably shouldn't either. But we're going to be mostly focusing on those price increases today, because they're mostly pretty interesting to me, so I want to go through those. So our first card here is Sacred Guide. Sacred Guide went from 44 cents to $2, and it's from the Tempest block. Or not Tempest block, but Tempest set. Tempest whatever. But anyways, Sacred Guide is a 1-white creature human cleric. It's a 1/1, and you can pay a colorless and a white. You can sacrifice it and reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a white card. Put that card into your hand and exile all other cards revealed this way. So, it's kind of an interesting card in general. It's basically two things. Is that if you have blue in your deck, you could potentially do something where you get Sacred Guide, and then it's pretty much the only white card in your deck, and so when you draw it, you just draw your whole deck out. That'd be pretty hard to do in Commander, due to the fact that having only one white card in a dual color deck would be kind of weird. You could do it though. I don't know if that's the main use of it currently, but regardless, it is another one of those kind of cards where, let's say you're in a bind and you really need a white card. And so let's say if you just splash white a little bit, like you put in some really, really useful white cards in the sense of like Path of Exile or Wrath of God or something like that. Just like a couple, not a couple, but just a few of those. Sacred Guide can basically tutor for those cards, and if you're in a really bad situation, you can do it for that. So I think both applications can be useful, or you could just look at it as sort of a draw card. Sorta. But I guess if you're in a mono white deck, we can look at it that way too. If you're in a mono white deck, then basically you're just going through your lands. So if you're at the point where you don't need lands and you just need to draw a card, then you can use this and more or less draw a card. That's not a land. Draw a non-land card. So, non-artifact, non-land card. Sure, something like that. But interesting card. Don't know why it increased in price, but those seem like potential reasons. Let's go to our second card of the night. This one is Demonic Consultation. Demonic Consultation went from 1013 to 1560. And I remember it was a little while ago now, but a little while ago it was only like a couple of dollars because the price increase went from like 40 to 50 cents to like $2. I think I bought a couple at $2 because like, oh, that's kind of a cool card. And to kind of get in what this card actually does here, this is from the Ice Age set, and Demonic Consultation cost 1 black is an instant, and you choose a card name. Exile the top 6 cards of your library. Then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card with the chosen name. Put that card into your hand and exile all other cards revealed this way. So this card is dangerous, but it can also be really good depending on what you're trying to do. So back to Labman, because Labman is a pretty decent win condition. So this card, you can basically just say, I'm going to name a card that I don't have in my deck. And then what happens is so I guess let's kind of review what it does again, because it's probably a little bit of a earful. But basically what you do is you name a card, you then exile the top 6 cards of your deck, and then you go through the rest of your deck until you find that card, and you exile all those cards. So if you were to name a card that's not in your deck at all, then what happens is you will basically just exile your whole deck, and you'll have no cards in your library. At that point in time, if you had Labman out and you drew a card, you would then win the game. The good thing about this is that it only costs 1 black, and it's also instant. So you could do this at this into somebody's end step, and you get off the Labman on your draw, for instance. So, or you can do it during your upkeep or whatever. But still, It's good for that. The other thing it's really good for, and I think in either case, like if you have Labman in your deck, or if you have a Labman in your deck and you have black accessible in your commander deck, then you should probably put Demonic Consultation in. So I saw on a video where someone used Demonic Consultation as a last resort to try and find a card for an answer so that they wouldn't lose immediately. And while it's a good idea, and this is, as a last resort kind of deal, what happened was that he named a card, so let's just say he needed Path or Source of Plowshare or something like that, Path to Exile, whatever. He named that card, and then he exiled the top 6 cards of his deck. And what happened was that in those top 6 cards, Swords to Plowshare was there, and then at that point, he had to dig through his whole deck trying to find another Swords to Plowshare. Thus, he milled himself out completely, but it didn't matter because the other guy won at that point, more or less. So, it's a good thing in the sense of it's a very risky tutor if you really need it. As I said, that's more of a last resort kind of deal, but really good Labman win condition as well. So let's go ahead and go to next card here. This is Iron Scale Hydra. Iron Scale Hydra went from 1886 to 39.99, but this is from Theros Beyond Death, so not a big deal. So Iron Scale Hydra is 3 colorless, green. It's a 5/5 creature, Hydra, who would have thought? And if a creature would deal combat damage to Iron Scale Hydra, prevent that damage and put a +1/+1 counter on Iron Scale Hydra. So this is basically a big old meat shield, and that gets even bigger. So if someone attacks, you block, and at that point in time, so if they block with a 1/1, he'll get a +1/+1 counter. If they block with a 10/10, he'll prevent that damage and put 10 1/1 counters on him, become a 15/15. So pretty spooky in that sense. I like this card because it's Hydra, and Hydras are cool creatures. I don't know actually how good this card is. If you're doing Hydra Tribal, you might as well put it in there more or less. But in other senses, it is a good chump blocker, or it's a good blocker and a good attacker because someone wants to probably block it. But since it's only prevent combat damage, it's not going to do a ton because most people basically will probably deal 5 damage 2 or 3 times. And in a 4-player game, that's kind of for commander. But I guess since you probably keep it as a blocker, and I don't know. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that it seems like it could be really crazy, but I don't know how crazy it really is. Kind of reminds me of Vigor. Vigor is basically give all your other creatures prevent damage and put that many +1/+1 counters on them. So for instance, if someone was to do Lightning Bolt on your Land of War Elves or something for some reason, then Vigor would prevent that damage and give Land of War Elves 3 +1/+1 counters. But now if someone did Lightning Bolt on Vigor, he couldn't prevent the damage to himself unless there was 2 Vigors out or something like that. But still think it's an interesting card, and I guess we'll see where it kind of goes power-wise, but I don't think it's going to be like a huge deal or anything. I definitely don't think it's going to be a $40 card. I'll say that for sure. And we'll go to the last card of price increases, which this is Underworld Breach. Underworld Breach went from $6 to $7.42, and this is also from Theros Beyond Death, so take these prices with a grain of salt. I really like this card though. I feel like it could be very, very, very powerful. So Underworld Breach is a 1 colorless, 1 red enchantment. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. So if you don't know what escape is, then basically escape is where you can cast a card from your graveyard by paying its mana cost, and then you usually exile some amount of cards. We kind of went over this. This is the new Theros thing, and it's some of the creatures and spells that have it. They're okay with the escape mechanic. Some are just kind of whatever. But I think giving any card in you basically give every single card in your graveyard flashback for their cost, and you exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. And that's pretty crazy. I think giving everything more or less flashback for a turn for their original cost is pretty good. Because usually flashback costs are 2 to 3 times the original cost, it feels like, at least. And then usually other cards that say like give flashback only applies to one card. What's really cool about the Underworld Breach is that when you use a card, so like the one that I saw was someone had Underworld Breach, and then they would cast Wheel of Fortune, and then they can just keep casting Wheel of Fortune over and over again because of Underworld Breach. And then, of course, I had like a mana thing, which is Lion's Eye Diamond. Yeah. I believe that was Casually Competitive, the YouTube channel. But anyways, I think regardless, like in competitive sense, I think this would be pretty crazy, but there's a lot of ways to do infinite stuff with that. But I think just even in casual play or whatever play, it's very good. I think it's just being able to keep casting a card over and over again. Yeah, I like it. I mean, sure, you have to be kind of aware that you need to do somewhat of a graveyard deck, but regardless, I think it's pretty good. I like the idea a lot. I don't know if this card's going to be like worth a lot or anything. I'm not too worried about that, but hope it comes down enough to where I can buy some. And then we're going to go ahead and go into our Commander of the Night. And this card will kind of help our commander. This is where I saw it played today. This was Feldon of the Third Path. So I was playing this commander, and I've always liked this card quite a bit. I don't think of him as a commander, but definitely can be a commander. And he is, if you like graveyard decks, he's pretty good for that. So what Feldon of the Third Path does is he costs 1 colorless, red. He is a 2/3 legendary creature, human artificer. And then you can pay 2, a red, tap him, create a token that's a copy of target creature card in your graveyard, except as an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So basically, what this is you want to try and mill yourself in some way. And that it's a lot easier, I would say, to do this in Jund, but of course, if you're trying to use this as a commander, you don't have access to Golgari, which gives you a lot of good dredge cards. So in this case, you're going to have to find ways to tutor, or there's actually a ton of red cards that are basically discard a card, draw 2, or discard 2 cards, draw 3, or etc., etc. So there's a lot of ways to cycle through cards in your deck. So kind of the idea would be is you want to get big creatures, discard them into your graveyard, and use Feldon to make a token of that. And token of that creature, then it gains haste and sacrifice at the end step. So since it says sacrifice, that means that surprisingly it doesn't say exile, honestly, but it does say sacrifice. So if that creature has a death effect, that effect will go off. So for instance, Wormcoil Engine, which is basically a 6/6 that has Death Touch and Lifelink, and when it dies, it creates a 3/3 worm with Death Touch and a 3/3 worm with Lifelink. So a Feldon, if you attack with it and no one blocks, they get to take 6 damage, but then since you have to sacrifice it at the end, you still get your 2 3/3 creature tokens. So pretty good. There's a lot of things you could do with that. But aside from that, there's another really cool thing you could do, and I've heard of this before. But what it is you can use, this is our random card for the night, which works pretty well with him. This is Sundial of the Infinite. Sundial of the Infinite is a 2 colorless artifact that costs, well, you can pay 1 and tap it. Then at the end of your turn, or you just end the turn, not at the end of your turn, you end the turn. Activate this ability only during your turn. So you can't end somebody else's turn, which is good at least. But so what does ending the turn do? And it tells you here, exile all spells and abilities on the stack, discard down to your maximum hand size, damage wears off, and this turn and until end of turn effects end. So how this was played is that you make a token, and then basically, since you ended the turn, it sacrifice at the next end step. You basically don't really go to your end step, you just end the turn. And yeah, that's kind of like the powerful thing is that, so sacrifice end step, see this turn and until turn effects end. So basically you get to keep your token because you didn't get to the end step, I guess. It's kind of like a weird interaction. I think I've heard of this before. Now, if that is wrong, let me know. But I'm pretty sure I've heard this to be true as well. But that's where it comes pretty crazy because now you're creating every turn creatures from your graveyard. Maybe they're 6 cost, 7 cost, whatever. You can actually keep them. So it's basically 3 mana, create a token of any creature in your graveyard. And that's pretty crazy. So, pretty fun stuff. So I've always liked the idea of this guy. He is pretty interesting. And I didn't even really think about too much of the commander. I just think he's a very good support card in any kind of graveyard deck or anything like that. But seeing him being pushed into a commander was pretty cool. So let's go ahead and go into our random cards of the night as always. So we'll do random card numero uno, which is a Gravel Slinger. Gravel Slinger is a 3 colorless white. It is a 1/3 creature human soldier. Gravel Slinger deals 1 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Alright. It's kind of weird for a white card, but sure. It's usually like, I'd see prevent, but damage is kind of weird. I guess because he's a Gravel Slinger, he's like just throwing rocks at people. But he also has Morph. So Morph, you can basically play this creature face down for 3 colorless, and it's a 2/2. And you can cast it face up anytime for its Morph cost. And its Morph cost here indicates that it costs 1 colorless and a white. So basically this means that, I don't know if you've interacted with Morph. Morph was kind of in one of the big themes in the Commander 19 decks. And basically how Morph works is that it is more or less split second / better, kind of. It's either, I think it's on the level of split second or pretty much better than split second. And split second is basically you in the stack. And you can't react to a split second card because you basically, the stack's done once you play that split second card. But Morph can actually react to split second cards because they are going kind of beyond the stack. It's kind of a weird thing. I'm not going to get too much into that. But basically, the idea would be is that you play this Morph face down, and then people wonder what you have. It's kind of like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Trap card. And then when the opponent attacks, you can surprise them and do an extra damage to them. Ooh, this card's not great, but whatever. There you go. There you got a little bit of a Morph mechanic explanation. Let's go ahead and go to our second card of the night, which is Haktos the Unscarred. Haktos the Unscarred costs red, white. He is a 6/1 legendary creature human warrior. He attacks each combat if able. Oh, this is a Theros Beyond Death card, actually. I just kind of noticed that. This is a new card. Oof, look at that price point. Not a lot of people liking him. But then, when he enters the battlefield, choose 2, 3, or 4 at random. So you roll a dice or whatever. And then he has protection from each converted mana cost other than the chosen number. So, if, for instance, you rolled, and let's say you got 3, then that means that he has protection from any spell and any permanent then 3. So, let's say if they had a token creature that's 0 mana cost, the token creature can't block him. Or at least, yeah, can't block him, I'm pretty sure. But let me know on that, but I'm pretty sure. But regardless, if he was to block a token, then he wouldn't take any damage from it, and he would deal damage back to the token. And that basically goes for any other permanent. Also, you couldn't target him with something like Path to Exile, because Path to Exile cost 1, so He has protection from that. However, if you had something like Putrefy, which costs 3, it wouldn't have protection from anything that has 3 costs, so there you go. So kind of interesting. It's an interesting concept nonetheless. I like the idea of it. So that will pretty much wrap it up for the night. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see you next time, and have a good one.